Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. What a pleasure and a privilege to be in the midst of men and women who seek to have both success and significance. I've discovered one thing about life. Life does not give us what we need. Life almost always gives us what we deserve. And if we want to deserve more, we have to become more valuable. Someone defined value by simply the size of problems that you're capable of solving. So there are two pains in life you and I are going to suffer from, like it or not. One is the pain of discipline. One is the pain of regret. Those men and women who are disciplined in their life, who set their goals, who define them, who work them tenaciously and with great commitment, tend to achieve marvelous things. And others marvel at their achievements with both respect and a sense of dignity. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what your life has been like. Let me just sort of set the stage for you. I believe that performers always focus on results. I believe that non-performers always focus on obstacles. Which are you? My father died when I was 6 years of age. Sometimes someone will ask me this question, Nido, if you could change one thing in your life, what might be the one thing you'd want to change in your life? My answer is always the same. I know that answer by heart. I'd say, my goodness, if I could change one thing in my life, I would have much rather have had a dad who would have seated me in his lap, a dad who would have taken me to the circus, a dad who would have thrown me a ball, sang me a song, read me a book, or merely talked with me man to man. But you see, dear friend, that was not my fate. Have you discovered in your life that sometimes out of adversity can emerge abundance? My mother brought us up. Now, my mother had fourth grade education. I'd put her against 25 PhDs from the finest Ivy League schools of your own picking. Here's why. My mother had this postgraduate degree in a discipline you and I would call common sense. Someone said, you know the trouble with common sense? It ain't as common as it once was. My mother would work day and night to feed us and clothe us. 5 in the family, 3 boys, 2 girls, and to instill in us values for life and principles for living. For example, my mother would say to me, Nido, if you want to be a great man, you must first walk hand in hand and side by side with people who are great. You want to be happy? Hang around people who are happy. You want to be successful? Be in the midst of people who are successful. You want to be rich? Find out what poor people do and don't do it. You know, Aristotle said excellence is not an act. Excellence is a habit. Excellence is a habit that you acquire through training and habituation. You can't be excellent Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and take Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday off. That wouldn't make any sense. You're either an excellent person or you're an ordinary person. Elbert Hubbard once said, one machine can do the work of 50 ordinary people. But he said, no machine, oh no, no machine could ever do the work of one extraordinary person. My mother would say, always learn from the experts. Always learn from the experts. Because the experts have their knowledge in order. Have you noticed that when your knowledge is not in order, the more knowledge you have, the more confused you become by definition? The bookstores of America are packed, filled with books and information about financial planning, and yet 60% of America's households are one paycheck away from bankruptcy. How can that possibly be in the land of the free and the home of the brave? Dear friend, 80% of America's households, 80% of America's households have a net worth of under $100,000. Now, if you're 25, you're not supposed to have a lot of money. But if you've been working for 10, 15, 20 years, you should have saved some money, invested some money, and perhaps ridden some good times in the stock market. Now, here's the irony of all this, that immigrants in America, immigrants to America are not once, not twice, not thrice, but 4 times as likely to become millionaires as born Americans. I wonder why. Is it that they're smarter? Work harder? I think not. I think it is because from their heart, from their soul, from their being, their beliefs, derives all that they are and all that they can therefore become. It is our beliefs that drive our behaviors that create our results. So if we don't like what we've got, we got to change our behaviors. And the only way we can change our behaviors is to revisit our belief system. What is it we really believe in? And so my mother said, learn from the experts, because the experts have already traveled through this journey. They have already done this kind of values clarification. They have already arrived at some conclusions of wisdom and insight about life and about living. My mother would say, listen, it's not the circumstances in which you find yourself, son, that define the person you become. It is always the choices you make in your life. I mean, 5 years from now, you and I are going to be exactly the same persons we are on this day, except for the choices you and I make, beginning today and up to 5 years from now. I've made a few choices in my life. Some you may think are pedestrian choices. They're functional, they're even transactional, but sometimes they lead to a transformation in my own life, making me more effective, if you will, and more efficient, if you will. Choices like I no longer read the newspaper in the morning, I read it in the evening. In the morning, I read books and I listen to audio materials that inspire my heart, nourish my brain, nurture my soul. Choices like I've gotten rid of my alarm clock and I've replaced it with an opportunity clock. And I beat that opportunity clock every day by 10 or 15 minutes. Think of it, fire alarm, burglar alarm, wake-up alarm. If you're still waking up to an alarm clock, get rid of it. It's killing your inspiration. Choices like, I have in my to-do list, of course, but I have my stop-doing list, too. To do is transactional. To stop doing, your stop-doing list leads you to your list called to be. I must be before I can do. Choices like I pay myself first, and I've paid myself first from the very first day I began to work. Now, I couldn't pay myself much, but it was $1 or $2 or $3. I have never to this day violated that rule. It's amazing what you can do when you pay yourself first. Choices like every single day of my life, I call 4 or more of my clients and prospects. Every single business day, I pick up the phone and I call 4 of my prospects or clients. Often just to say hello, often to find out how they're doing, often to give them some information of value. It's amazing how relational capital is the bridge that connects us with both success and significance in life. And choices like having my list of 100. If you came in my office, you will see that I have a list of 100 names. Actually, it's 168 names. These are my most important clients and prospects. And every single month, I ensure that I connect with each of them at least once. I've had to make choices in my life. I think the greatest choice I've had to make in my life is to understand that if you want to succeed in life, all you really have to do is define your goals, put them in writing, and then begin to look at everything that you do every day and assess if that is getting you closer to your goals. If it is, do more of it. If it isn't, do less of it. And you will find, just as a matter of course, life has a way of propelling us forward. My mother would say, look, all meaningful change comes from inside. If you want to change something about who you are, what you believe, what are you going to accomplish, change from within. I've discovered in life that the only person in society who really welcomes change is a baby in wet diapers. for the rest of us, we don't want to change until the pain of remaining the same becomes greater than the pain of changing. Isn't that sad? You know, for the timid in our society, change is always, always frightening. You know, for the comfortable in our society, change is always, always threatening. But for the confident amongst us, change, my friend, change is opportunity. I know a little something about change. I came to America with no money, no English, and no connections. Let me tell you how I learned this language I'm using here today. I took a 3x5 card. I put 10 English words on this card today, and I memorized spelling and meaning of those 10 words. Tomorrow, I took a 3x5 card. I put 10 English words on this card. I memorized the spelling and meaning of those 10 words as I reviewed the 10 words from the day prior. Like Aristotle said, excellence is not an act. Oh, no. Excellence is a habit. The next day, I took a 3x5 card. You're getting the idea. I gave myself Sunday off. By Saturday, I was learning 10 English words and reviewing 50 from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The average American has some 5,000 words in his or her vocabulary. I have in mind 3,120 words. That will be 60 words a week multiplied by 52 weeks. Take 3,120, divide them over 5,000. That'll give you 62.5%. That's what I have in my vocabulary. 62.5% of what the average American possesses in his or her vocabulary. You would call me disadvantaged, handicapped, linguistically speaking. Here is my point. Nobody could ever whine to me about why they can't achieve their dreams. I meet men and women every day who let their fears overcome their dreams. Life is lived best when you set yourself with a goal. And so my mother said, meaningful change comes from within. Have you noticed in your life that every single improvement in your life comes as a result of change? I mean, any improvement that ever comes in your life is there because you changed something. I am not advocating change for the sake of change. Very often change does not inure improvement, but improvement is always the result of change. So where does that confidence I'm talking about comes from? If for the confident, change leads to opportunity, where does one get this confidence? Well, I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that the only place confidence can come from is competence. 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 When you've got your knowledge, when you've got your skill, when you've got your experience, all merging together congruently and in focus. The result then is competence. We say in these ever-changing times, it is the survival of the most competent. We have no choice, you and I, but to be competent. When you're competent, you're good at what you do. It doesn't mean you're perfect at what you do. It simply means you are good at what you do. It means you're better than most people at what you do. And somehow something amazing happens when you're competent. You begin to make a commitment towards extraordinary behavior. And how do we measure extraordinary behavior in life and in business? We measure it with results. At the end of the day, all that matters really are the bottom line results. How many of you have children? Well, my wife and I have 4 children. Our oldest is just graduated from graduate school, and we have a young one who's only 15. And I know you're surprised, but hey, vitamin E every day. And we don't give our kids any pocket money. We only allow them to earn their money. So here's an example. When my daughter Christina would make an A in a course at the end of a semester, I would give her $100. Now, Christina would take 8 courses, and there were 2 semesters in a year. So there's an opportunity here to make a lot of money. When she would make an A, I would give her $100. When she would make a B, I would give her $75 because a B is not as good as an A. When she would make a C, I would give her nothing. Zippo, zilch, nada. Why? Because C is average, and we should never reward average. We ought never reinforce behaviors we don't want to get more of. And if she would get a D, she would owe me $50. It's called the value of fairness and justice. What's good for Christina is going to be good for Daddy. And if she would get an F, she'd move into your house. What kind of grades do you think Christina got? And the answer is straight A's. So in my life, dear friends, I've really had to make some very, very serious strategies that would allow me to come to this country as a poor immigrant, to work 10 hours a day, to work my way through school, to work 17 hours a day, 7 days a week, initially to build my business, and to go forward with the grace of God and the help of others over these many years to build half a dozen businesses, and all along this journey to be grateful in my heart and to be philanthropic and a faithful steward in my actions. What are those? What are those strategies? Well, here are 3 or 4 of them. First, it seems to me I had to make up my mind. I had to make a choice between merely developing, learning, maximizing, and perfecting the skills of communication. Now remember, I couldn't speak English, so it was important to me to speak this language in a fluid, fluent, and flowing manner. But I recognized very quickly it's not enough to merely know how to communicate effectively. That truly the greatest of leaders go beyond that, and they connect with people. They go from communicating to connecting. Something magical happens when you connect heart to heart, soul to soul, mission to mission with another human being. Now, you know, people tell us that you and I invest about 83% of our time each day at communicating, whatever function you're involved in. We all have to communicate. And the truth is, all you have to do to communicate effectively is to learn this simple acronym. It's called SLOW, S-L-O-W. To speak, to listen, to observe, and to write. Master those 4 skills: speaking, not talking; listening, not merely hearing; observing, not merely seeing; and writing, not merely scribbling. And now you've just perfected this system called effective communication. Now, I could tell you 1,000 stories about how I just learned the English language and I had to use it in ways that created for me so much miscommunication and so many now funny, then embarrassing incidents. Here's an example. I walked in a store to buy a pair of pajamas. Now, I've just learned how to speak the English language. I picked a pair of pajamas right off the shelf. I looked at the label on the back of the collar, and the label on the back of the collar said, "These pajamas are shrink resistant." Now, wouldn't you be confused if you had just learned the English language to read something that says, "These pajamas are shrink resistant"? So I called the clerk over and I said to her, "Ma'am, please forgive me for being so terribly naive, but it says right here that these pajamas are shrink resistant. I beg you, ma'am, to tell me, what does that mean? I mean, they either shrink or they don't shrink, for crying out loud." Her answer was a classic. She said, "Sir, that means these pajamas will shrink." But she said they don't want to. I was in Atlanta one day speaking to a nice audience, and I came outside this big church. Outside this big church was this big sign, and on this big sign was the name of the church, and under the name of the church was the title of the sermon, and the title of the sermon was, "Do you know what hell is?" And under that was an announcement in capital letters which read, "Come hear our organist Sunday morning." We say things we don't mean, we mean things we don't say, and we wonder why on God's earth people don't do what we ask them to do. But you see, we must go beyond communicating to connecting. To connecting. Here, I believe, is a definitive question for connecting with people. The definitive question merely is this one: how must this person feel first? So this person will do what I'm asking him or her to do. How must this person feel first? Trust is the foundation to all relationships. Only when trust is there will reason be there, or focus, or congruence, or rendering of value, or success, or significance. We must know people's needs and fears and dreams and expectations to connect with them in manners that are sufficiently useful and sufficiently personal for them in their life. So first, for me, I acknowledge, based on significant research, watching great men and women in endeavors and sectors of society of all types and kinds, that you and I must go from communicating being the prerequisite for existence, to connecting being the advanced level of building relational capital with one and all who matters to us in our life. Secondly, it seems to me that I've concluded that selling is the single most honorable profession perhaps on the face of this earth. I define selling not only as someone who sells products, but as someone who sells ideas or products or services. By that definition, one and all is a salesperson. We like to say things like this: nothing happens till somebody sells something. I like to say a great salesperson can sell a mediocre product faster and better and more successfully and more profitably than can a mediocre salesperson sell a great product. In my business, I like to treat every one of my customers as if I'm about to lose them. I often say to all of my people, all of my teams, nobody wants to buy our product. Nobody wants to buy our product. At great Harvard stores across America or any of my other institutions I'm involved in, nobody wants to buy our product. What people want is the product of our product. We're a medium to get them what they really want out of life. But I concluded that merely learning how to sell is a prerequisite, that we must go from selling to positioning. Just like we must go from communicating to connecting, we must go from selling to positioning. Well, what is positioning? Here's my definition. It doesn't matter how much you know or what you can do. No, it doesn't. Obviously, you know a lot. Obviously, you can do a lot, or you wouldn't be engaged in a profitable profession which inures and renders for you legal tender. Obviously, you know a lot and can do much. That doesn't matter. Here's what does matter from a positioning perspective. What other people believe and perceive you can do for them. At the end of the day, dear friends, your value is measured by the size of problems you're capable of solving. So we like to ask these three questions about positioning. Why should people do business with me? Why me? Given choices, why me? We like to ask these questions about positioning. How easily can someone else imitate what I do? Can you see how the easier it is for someone else to imitate what you do, the less valuable by definition you've now just become? A third question we ask about positioning: if I were in the marketplace to buy what you have to sell, would I think of you first? Would I think of you second? Would I think of you at all? You know, a bag of Hershey's chocolates, perhaps my all-time favorite, really, those little Hershey's Kisses. You can buy a bag about, this big for what, $2.98 or so. An equal amount of chocolate packaged in a gold box with a ribbon on top called Godiva, an equal amount in weight, would sell for about $35 or $40. Why would people pay 10 times as much for the same amount of chocolate? And the answer is people buy Hershey's to eat, they buy Godivas to give. I mean, when was the last time you bought yourself a $40 box of Godiva and ate it on the way home? People don't do that. That's what branding is all about. You know, some people have brand awareness. That is no big deal. Just to have people know about you is not a big deal. That's called brand awareness. I am fully aware of many a brand in America. I do not purchase that brand. I do not invest my money in that brand. And I suspect the same is true of you. Then you have brand preference. That's cool. We want people to prefer us over all others. But when you have brand insistence in your life, when people will drive out of their way, when people will go out of their way to choose you and insist on doing business with you, that, my friends, is the ultimate in branding and positioning. How do we position ourselves in an already cluttered and competitive and ever-changing marketplace? Well, first and foremost, it seems to me, we position ourselves with our self-esteem. Oh, how I thank my fourth grade educated mother, who taught me that being poor is a temporary condition, who taught me that all things matter about how you feel about yourself. But if you feel about yourself well without earning it, that would be called conceit. But if you work hard at feeling good about yourself based on merit and learning and ever growing, that would be called self-esteem. We first and foremost, my dear friend, position ourselves with our self-esteem. Self-esteem asks this question: how do I feel about me? You know, the number one sale you and I have to make is we've got to sell ourselves to ourselves. Number two sale we have to make in life is to sell ourselves to other people. But first, I got to sell me to me. Second way we position ourselves is with our appearance. Appearance answers this question: when someone looks at me, what do they see? When someone looks at you, what do they see? Do they see someone learned or someone ignorant? Someone committed or someone tentative? A team player or a disruptive person? What do they see? Regretfully, in the first 10 seconds, people see us or meet us. They make impressions of us that may last for the longest of periods of time. Thirdly, we position ourselves with our words. Words are ever so important. Don't use words like I think or I might or I'll try. Use words like I believe, I will, you can depend on me. I had a guy working with me one time. Every time I'd give him an assignment, he'll answer me by saying, I think I might be able to try. You can't build a business with a person like that on your team. Then you position yourself with your focus. I still meet people every day who are focused. Focus on generating income. How incredibly crazy is that? And yet every day I meet men and women who are focused on generating value. Dear friend, you generate value. Income is the byproduct of value delivered. The smartest people I know who generate value have also mastered the art of interpreting the value. And the only way to interpret value is to see it from the perspective of the receiver of that value. What matters to them, what's in it for them. And of course, we position ourselves with our attitude. The older I get, the more I recognize the happiest people, the most successful people, just have great attitudes. They just get up in the morning feeling good about life. Get up in the morning singing praises that they are alive, that they can walk and talk, and that they are professionally engaged, that they have friends and they have a brain, and they can apply all of that for the common good. Here's a cute story about attitude. This guy's flying from Pittsburgh to Atlanta. It was a Friday night. They didn't serve much on the plane. It was just a sandwich for dinner. Everybody ate their sandwich, grateful to God they had something to partake and to take care of their soul, except this guy. He had to reach up above him in the ceiling of the plane, you know, where there was a bell, ring, ring, ding, 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 ring, ring, ding, till the flight attendant came running down the aisle. She said, "Sir, have we an emergency here today?" He said, "Yes." He said, "This is a bad sandwich." And the flight attendant, without flinching, picked up the sandwich with her left hand, took one look at it, and she went, "Bad sandwich, bad sandwich." Now, I don't know about you, but I'm telling you, if I were on that plane, I don't care how tired or busy I may have been, I would have been the last guy to get off that plane. I would have wanted to interview that flight attendant. I would have wanted to say to her, "Ma'am, You got to tell me what entered your mind when the jerk of a passenger was so nasty with you. I would have wanted to say to her, ma'am, in all my living days, personally, I have never seen a sandwich punished before. Can't you hear her now? She'd say, oh, sir, I met all kinds of passengers. I have seen all kinds of people. I could have just as easily said to this guy, you don't like this sandwich, sir? Well, let me tell you what you can do with this sandwich. You don't like our airline? We don't need your business. You don't like this flight? See the exit sign right there? But she'd say, had I told him any or all of that, I'd have dragged myself back to the galley. My friends would have said to me, what are you so upset about? And I would have said, I hate this job. Thank God it's Friday. I can't wait till I retire. I've had it with all these passengers and their quirky demands. Instead, can't you see this woman running down the aisle, holding back her laughter? She gets to the galley, her friend said, what in the world are you laughing about? She'd say, you won't believe what I just did to the dude. In 21C, they'd say, what did you do to the dude in 21C? She'd say, I just beat the heck out of his sandwich. Nothing ever replaces attitude. Your attitude displayed on the outside of you is the precise exclamation, explanation, and commentary on the person who resides on the inside of you. So we have to go beyond communicating to connecting. We have to go beyond selling to positioning. And we have to go beyond training. If I were king for a day, I would have every company in America change the name of its training department from training department to education and development, or development and education. Let me attempt to make some distinctions for you. In my life, I chose to go from training to education. Friend, education is what's left over when all the training is long forgotten. Now, don't misunderstand me. The most unfair thing on the face of this earth is for you to expect someone in your employ to do something you have not trained them to do. For compliance purposes, for consistency purposes, and other reasons too, we must train people to do that which is technical and transactional. That's a given. What I'm saying is that's not enough. Just like communicating and selling alone without connecting and positioning are not enough. So we have to go from training to education. When you train someone, you show them the how. When you educate someone, you teach them the why. The person who knows the how will always have a job. The person who understands the why will always be their boss. When you train someone, you show them what to do. When you educate someone, you teach them how to be. When my kids' school teaches our children how to count, that would be called training. When my wife and I teach our children what counts, that, my friend, is called education. So I walked in a McDonald's one day to buy something. Attractive young lady behind the counter looks at me and says, sir, how may I serve you today? I said, I'd like to have a vanilla milkshake and an apple pie. She said, sir, would you like a dessert to go with that? I said, sure, throw in a Big Mac and 2 fries, will ya? And one has to beg the simple question, what went wrong? And we know the answer, we know the answer. The answer is we trained them in the mechanical and the transactional. We did not educate them in the emotional and the transformational. And in so doing, we denied ourselves the competitive stance of being head and shoulders above most other competitors. Now, I know what some of you are thinking: training, education. Foreign boy comes to America, learns our language, shows up to sort of confuse us with some semantical differences about these words. Okay, I love a challenge. Let me ask you a question, and then I will simply rest my case. Which would you rather your teenager get? Sex education or sex training? I rest my case. To be educated, you got to do 4 things. You have to have a clear vision. You have to have a solid strategy. You have to pursue practical systems. And you have to commit yourself to consistent execution. Violate one of the 4. Education somehow will be deleted or diluted in its impact and its substance. And one last thing I've had to do in my own life, I believe could be very useful for you, is I've had to make the choice to travel the distance from success to significance. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I discovered that success by any measure is secular. Significance by any measure is spiritual. And it doesn't matter how you define your own spirituality. What does matter is that those things that are spiritual tend to be deeper, more meaningful, more touching, more lasting, more impactful in our lives. So when we talk about success, we talk about the 3 F's of achieving. You know the 3 F's of achieving? Fans, fame, fortune. I have my fans, I have my fame, I have my fortune, I therefore must be a successful person. How empty is such an existence? But people who subscribe to significance subscribe to this notion called appreciating. Appreciating. The 3 F's of appreciating are your faith, your family, and your friends. And friend, when you have all 3, I ask you simply, what else? Really, 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 what else do you need in your life? People who speak of success talk about giving back. You've heard him say, this community has been good to me, I must give back. My alma mater has been good to me, I must give back. Giving back is no big deal. Giving back implies you owe something to someone. It is your duty to give it back. You borrow money from the bank, you give it back, principal and interest on a certain timeline. That is your duty. You better do it or they'll repossess your home or your car. Significance speaks of giving. Merely giving. William Barclay, the Scottish theologian, said something that's been an absolute mantra in my life. William Barclay said, always give without remembering. Always receive without forgetting. Oh, wow. Giving is like loving. You don't love your children back because they loved you first. You love your children even when your children are unlovable. So merely give. Be in the zone of significance. I do not know what success is. I do know it is not enough. And I also know that I've never met a person who is both successful and happy, truly happy, who got there by deceiving other people. I've met a lot of happy people. I've met a lot of successful people, but never one who's successful and happy who got there by deceiving others. Sort of violates the law of integrity and all else we've talked about here so far. So success is not that important. Significance is having someone you love and someone who loves you. Having some purposeful work in which you can lose yourself. Purposeful work that could help other people. Having somewhere to be that brings you joy and brings you satisfaction and brings you purpose. Some people, as you know, live the life at the task level every day. They go to work, they do all the things they have to do, come home, drink a beer, burp, go to sleep, get up the next morning, repeat the process all over again. Some people set their goals and they very carefully work those goals. But the happiest people I have ever met, the most significant people I've ever met, are the ones who live their life at the purpose level. Occasionally I will ask an audience this question: if you had 6 months to live, how would you spend the last 6 months of your life? Because the answer that you would give us for this question will tell us a lot about what it is that you value in your own life. I had a smart alecky guy the other day say to me, he said, if I had 6 months to live, I'd tell you what I would do. I said, what's that, sir? He said, if I had 6 months to live, I'd move in with my mother-in-law. Because he said that would be the longest 6 months. There was this guy who had a little dime store, the corner of Elm and Commerce. It's a little store. He's a good man. His prices were fair. His location was strategic. He was honest. People began to talk about him. He had more customers. He expanded his store. He had more stores from border to border and coast to coast. He built his chain of stores. One day he was taken ill to the hospital and he wanted one of his 3 adult children to become the president of the company, and he knew not which one should become the president of this company. So he called all 3 of his adult children into the hospital room and he said to them, one of the 3 of you will take over the reins of this company. I know not which one it would be, so here's what I choose to do. He reached in his pocket and he took out 3 $1 bills and he gave son number 1 $1, son number 2 $1, and daughter number 3 $1. And he said, go downtown today, spend your money any way that you choose. But when you come back here tonight, however you spent this money must fill this room from corner to corner, must fill this room. Excited as they were, they all went, they all spent their money, they all came back in the evening. And the daddy said, what did you do with your money? And son number 1 said, Daddy, I went out to see my friend whose family has a big barn on this big farm. I gave him my $1. He gave me 2 bales of hay. He brought in those bales of hay into the hospital room, tore them apart, threw the hay up in the sky, and momentarily the room was filled. But we all know what happens to hay. Tumbled down, settled on the floor, and the daddy said, no, sir. Son number 2, what have you done with your $1? Son number 2 said, Daddy, I went down to Sears and Roebuck, where they had a sale on pillows made with feathers. I gave the clerk my $1. He gave me a pillow. He brought in the pillow. He tore it open. He took the feathers. He threw them up in the sky. And momentarily the room was filled. But much like the hay, the feathers tumbled down, settled on the floor. And the daddy said, no, sir. Daughter number 3, what have you done with your $1? Oh, she said, Dad, I took my $1 to a store like the one you had years ago. I gave the owner this paper $1, and I asked him for some currency, some coins, quarters, dimes, nickels. I took 50 cents of that $1, and I invested in something very worthwhile, just like the Holy Bible says, invest thine talents. I took 20 cents of my $1, and I gave it to my house of worship. I took 10 cents of my $1, gave it to the Boy Scouts of America, 10 cents to the Girl Scouts of America, and Daddy, you added all up and left me 1 dime, 10 tiny little pennies. And with those 10 tiny little pennies, Daddy, I went back to the store, gave the man my money, and I bought 2 things. She reached in one pocket and she took out a little matchbook. She reached in the other pocket and she took out a little candle. She struck the match. She lit the candle. She turned the light switch off. And the room was full. The room is completely full. Not with hay, not with feathers, but with light. You are the light of the world. What you do in your business, in your life, with your family, in your community, can light up the biggest of stadiums in the pitchness of darkness. Or can do something less than that, but it is always your choice. Do not, dear friends, fall for the myth of success. Stand tall and choose wholeheartedly the promise of significance. And when you do that, you're richer, and all about you and around you, in this the land of the free and home of the brave, become richer. Thank you, and God bless you.